Today is day 127, and I'm reading from 2 Samuel 6 through 7 and 1 Chronicles chapter 17. Here's an account of David bringing the ark into Jerusalem. 30,000 people are helping him in this flashy parade. They're coming in with song and dance, and they are playing music extravagantly. But exuberance without obedience is dangerous, and flashy worship and passion without holiness is disastrous. Uzzah reaches out and takes hold of the holy ark, and God's anger is aroused. You see, they treated God lightly and they disregarded his holy instructions. David is immediately angry and expresses his displeasure with God's behavior, and then fear grips David, but a wrong kind of fear, a dreaded fear, a terror of God. David then does not bring the ark into Jerusalem, but he hears of the favor resting upon Obed-Edom's house. He reviews the laws that God had established. He revisits God and purposes to bring the ark properly into Jerusalem. Now he brings the ark in with sacrifices and holiness and with sacred care, and the ark is paraded in with passionate praise. David, behaving not like a king, dances and leaps and twirling before God and before the people with all of his might. What a sight this must have been as the individuals of the kingdom were watching their king behaving in such a way, but yet I think was attractive and is appealing that the king was so willing to humble himself to worship his God. What a message before the people. David's wife is not impressed. She's accusing him of undressing before the ladies, which he did not do. What he did do, though, is that he took off his kingly robes and he put on the priestly robes. And he wasn't behaving, obviously, like a dignified king, at least not as what his wife thought that he ought to, certainly not as her father did, and she is embarrassed. David tells her he's not concerned what people think because this is just about him and the Lord, and that's all that matters to him. 2 Samuel chapter 7 is an extremely important chapter. David wants to build a house for God, and it is burning on the inside of him. He goes to Nathan the prophet. Nathan, though, presumptuously blesses him to do so. And so he releases him and says, do what's in your heart. And people often say, follow your heart. But even a man after God's heart doesn't get to follow his own heart. God corrects Nathan's advice, and he tells him to go back to David and say basically, oops, don't follow your heart, follow God. And by the way, the answer to your prayer is no. This is followed by great news, including the Davidic covenant, which has two parts. David's dynasty, which would obviously lead specifically to the coming Messiah, but also it refers to Solomon's temple. That is, his son Solomon building the temple for God. I'm going to build you a house, not an actual house though, but a family line. One of your sons will build a house for me, is what the Bible says. Parts of this prophecy point to Christ, his eternal reign. This will be an everlasting, eternal kingdom. I love David's response. He goes and sets himself before the Lord, just sits out there before the Lord and has a chat with God. He pours out his heart in praise and expressive gratefulness to God. All of this demonstrates the importance for you and I of going to him on God's terms, waiting for God's timing, but our willingness to pursue God with everything that is within our heart.